Trade this life for fortune and fame. I'd even cut my hair and change my name. Cause we all just wanna be big rock stars and live in hilltop houses driving 15 cars. The girls come easy and the drugs come cheap. Well, I'll stay skinny cause we just won't eat. And we'll hang out in the coolest bars and the VIP with the movie stars. Every good gold digger's gonna wind up there. Every playboy bunny with the bleached blonde hair. And well, hey, hey, I wanna be a rock star. Hey, hey, I wanna be a rock star.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Puck and Roll podcast. Today, I am joined by Joshua Rosa and Itovitch for a more laid-back episode where we're going to discuss a few Habs prospects and some brainstorming on potential trades surrounding one very particular Habs player. Josh, Aaron, how are you guys doing?
Living the dream.
Living the dream. That is what I'd like to hear. Josh?
It's too cold.
Yeah, I know. It's our
cold.
First snow of the year for us in Ottawa.
Yeah, first snow in Montreal as well. And
yeah, I woke up and I was like speechless, didn't know how to feel, very conflicted emotions. And then I knew exactly how to feel because 2 buses fell through and I was late to class. And I was like, yes, my favorite
it was
part.
slippery outside my school.
It was great. Oh, lovely. Yeah, I guess to get us started, let's just dive straight into the rumor part of the episode. Josh Anderson. He is likely the Habs' most valuable trade chip at the moment. More valuable than Jake Allen, more valuable than Sean Monahan, perhaps more valuable than Mike Hoffman as well, despite his scoring streak in the last couple games. Josh Anderson is under contract for another, 4 seasons
5
after
years?
this one? Yeah, so 5 years, including this year, at $5.5 million, which is not the contract that you really want to go into a rebuild with. The Habs aren't competing for another few years. But he's a very valuable commodity. And the Montreal Canadiens could get an absolute haul for him if they do decide to trade him. Now, Aaron, you said you're hearing some things about Josh Anderson in the rumor mill.
So let's make this very, very clear here. I am not a hockey insider, but I have the pleasure of knowing a couple hockey insiders. And there are very, very clear ties that something's going to happen with Anaheim. It might not be Josh Anderson. It could be Hoffman. I doubt it's going to be Dadonov because there's that whole no trade thing last year.
That'd be funny, though.
It would be hilarious. But if you guys need any clarity on what's going on with Anaheim, Pat Verbeek was at the game last night. They're their general manager, and they have had scouts at every single one of our games this season. So something's up, and there is interest in Josh Anderson. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that trade package would look like. I heard that there could be a center involved coming back to us. It could be Mason McTavish, but we'd have
where
to add
the
a lot of
Habs would
assets.
have to add a lot.
But
And
Sebastian was bringing up before, a good target could be like Pavel Mintyukov, who's just a dynamic offensive defenseman. So if you want to talk a little more about him.
I mean, if the Habs found a way to get Pavel Mintyukov for Josh Anderson and basically any other asset on top of that, I'd be thrilled. I ranked Pavel Mintyukov 8th overall in the last draft, and he's looking somehow even better this year than he did last year in the OHL. He's up to 28 points in 19 games, including 10 goals as a defenseman. He leads the Saginaw Spirits in points by 9, and we're only 19 games into the season. And again, he's a defenseman. He is incredibly dynamic and very solid defensively. And overall, if the Habs get him, that is immediately the best defensive prospect in the entire system, ahead of Lane Hudson, ahead of Caden Gooley, ahead of anyone. And I'd be very happy with that.
One other player that we could very well have interest in is
Nathan Gaucher?
No, Anthony Stolarz. I know he's like 27 or something, but
okay.
I believe that
Why?
I believe that Jeff Gorton was really, really high on him when he was in New York as a backup for as like a long-term backup option. So if that's still there, he could be like a part of a trade.
I mean, that could only really work if the Habs then got a haul for Jake Allen as well, right? Because you're not going
It
to
could be
waive.
Jake Allen, or it could be we use Primo as a trade chip at one point.
Yeah, but it's more
'Cause
like
I feel like
you're
Montembeau
not
is
going to
past
waive
Primo.
Montembeau. Yeah, but you're not going to waive Montembeau just to add a third.
That's true.
goalie
Jake
to
Allen would have
the
to
NHL.
go.
Exactly.
But I know
other
that
name
there's
I-
been
I-
interest in Stolarz before, so that could very
Interesting.
well be something.
The other name I was thinking of there is Nathan Gaucher, who is, again, he's Quebecois. He is a power forward center. He's basically a lock to become a bottom six NHLer in his career. He plays a very pro-ready game. He's up to 10 goals and 20 points in 17 games this season. Overall, a very, very safe prospect to get. I'd be shocked if it were like him for Anderson 1-for-1. I don't think the Habs would like the value there straight up, but it would be an option. Other names that you could add to that package if you want to go like heavy cum JHL, it could be something like Nathan Gaucher and Noah Warren for Josh Anderson. And I know Aaron would love that as well, because both he and I are big Noah Warren fans.
Okay, by the way, I need to go back. I'm an idiot. I mixed up my Anaheim goaltenders. Lukas Dostal, not Anthony Stolarz.
That makes far more sense to me. Lukas Dostal would be a great target for the Habs.
I mixed them up because they were both in one of my NHL 22 franchises.
That is unfortunate. Yeah.
Even I was
Dostal
confused as I was saying Stolarz.
Lucas Dostal has put up tremendous numbers everywhere he's played. He is still very young at just 22 years old. He is stuck in the AHL because, again, the Ducks have pretty good goaltending. But he's put up he's put up a .916 save percentage in both of his seasons in the AHL, and this year is at a .918. He's been very consistent there, which is very rare for a goalie who, again, started in the AHL at 20 years old. I would love Lukas Dostal. I think he's one of the better goaltending prospects in the league, like probably somewhere around like 7th best in the league. So I would love that type of addition. And last name I'd throw out there, or last two names that like one of them just wouldn't happen, and the other one would be actually a fun like kind of value
Jamie
target.
Drysdale, the one that wouldn't happen.
No. Olin Zellweger.
Yes.
I would love Olin Zellweger. He is just one of the most fun defensemen to watch in the CHL. His production isn't quite on Mintyukov level this season just yet, but basically everything I said for Mintyukov applies to Zellweger. But Zellweger is just a better skater, and perhaps the upside is a smidgen lower, maybe, but just a very fun player. But if the Habs want to add a very, very good, but not quite as like expensive like player to acquire in terms of defensive prospects, because again, the Habs lack defensive prospects as a whole, especially guys that can play the right side, and this guy can play the right side in Jackson Lacombe. University of Minnesota player who has 11 points in 12 games this season. All around, just very, very solid and creative defenseman. But yeah, like Anaheim has.
I thought you were about to say Axel Anderson because he's a cool name.
No, unfortunately not. But Anaheim would be a very fun team for the Habs to make a trade with, because there are so many different targets. Like even guys that I haven't named yet, like Jacob Perreault, I could see the Habs liking. Henry Thrun, who's a teammate of
Sasha Pastujov.
Sasha Pastujov, Tristan Luneau, right? Like there are a lot of names here. I would agree, but I can see why the Habs might want to target that kind of player. But there's so much opportunity here in terms of who the Habs could target, which is why they make good trade partners, right? It's not like, I mean, other rumors that we've heard around Anderson have involved the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers. Both of those prospect pools are very dry in comparison to Anaheim's, which makes it a bit tougher to trade with, just because they value all of their players a lot more. In Calgary, you could see a name. Sorry with Edmonton. Edmonton, you have guys like Xavier Bourgault, you have Philip Broberg, right? If we're just sticking to prospects, I'm not seeing that much in terms of value, which will also mean that Edmonton will want to hold on more to the players that they have in their pool. However, if the Habs want to target a guy like Jesse Puljujarvi, there, I'd be very interested. I've always been a big fan of Puljujarvi, but yeah, Aaron, like in terms of Edmonton and Calgary, which names would you be going after? And Josh, please, if anything to add here, I'd be more than happy to listen.
Oh yeah, I could see just as a Josh Anderson fit, I could see Edmonton or Calgary being a better fit for him than Anaheim, just based on where they are trajectory wise right now. Anaheim's kind of in the same place as Montreal, where they both have deep, good prospect pools because they're both rebuilding. Like Anaheim's at the bottom of the West, or at least near the bottom of the West at this point, along with Montreal. So I could see that, and Montreal has recent trade history with both Calgary and Edmonton, with the Brett Kulak and the Tyler Toffoli trades. I can see one of those two more readily than Anaheim. I don't want to step on any insider toes here, because once again, I am totally not an insider in this. I just got my little hockey gut telling me that I'm leaning more towards the contenders that want Anderson than a rebuilding team. And I think we're looking more at an NHL return, like a Puljujarvi, where he's had a terrible start to the season, 3 points. But
yeah,
that's Gordon's and Hughes's MO is buy low. And he's low. And I think it could be a really neat, interesting, good fit for Montreal if they are able to swing that. I don't know if that's on the table, but it'd be something I'm looking at for sure.
So I believe the rationale from Anaheim was they need somebody to help the development of Zegras McTavish that can actually protect them a little bit, because I mean McTavish is on the fourth line, and Zegras is playing with really underwhelming line mates. We have too many wingers, we have too many centers.
I mean, Troy
Terry. Isn't Troy Terry playing with whoever?
I've not been checking their lines though.
I follow them on Instagram.
I was just expecting them to play together because they're two.
I don't think they're playing together.
That is interesting coaching.
1 second, give me 30 seconds. I'll find their lineup from last game. But I have not been happy
beat you to that one. It is Adam Henrique, Trevor Zegras, and Troy Terry on the first line. Second line includes a player that I've never heard of, which is rare. Pavel Regenda.
Pavel Regenda, 22 years old.
Who is
I have no idea where the hell he came from.
Pavel Regenda.
Which website are you on? Because
Daily Faceoff.
Okay, because I think their Instagram said something different.
I mean, Daily Faceoff just goes with like their average lineups, right? Rather than like an outlier. Is
he undrafted?
Yes,
undrafted.
6'3", 218 pounds. This is his first season in North America. He had 4 points in 4 AHL games and is now up to 3 points in 8 NHL games. And last year had 39 points in 43 games in the Slovakian Pro League, which is exactly where Philip Meshar and Simon Nimitz played last season.
Well, look at that. Pavel Regenda, future superstar.
Clearly, he's only 22 years old, so room to grow for sure.
Let's see. With Edmonton, they just lost Evander Kane.
They did.
And Josh Anderson is kind of the closest you're going to find to an Evander Kane style player on the market right now.
He's just worse and a better person.
He's just worse and a better person, yeah. But if Evander Kane was such a good fit on that wing, then I guess the logic would be Josh Anderson could be too.
They already have Puljujarvi. Like, just play Puljujarvi. I mean, sorry. It's Edmonton.
They've given up on that boy.
Which is stupid. Yeah,
so give him to us. It's perfect.
Exactly. It's perfect. And then on Calgary, in terms of interesting trade targets, there are 6 names that kind of stick out to me. So they have more in their cupboard than Edmonton does. Dustin Wolf is the big one. If the Habs can get Dustin Wolf in a Josh Anderson trade, that is basically everything I've said about Lukas Dostal I could say about Dustin Wolf, but just like ramp up the excitement a little bit. Dustin Wolf has dominated at every level he's ever played. And he'd be an amazing addition. He fell to the 7th round of the draft year despite dominating the WHL because he's small. And it's the NHL draft, especially for goalies. Small guys fall. In terms of other players, though,
one name that I would have in mind is Dylan Dubé.
Ooh, I like that shout. I've always been a fan of Dylan Dubé. I was mainly thinking right now of just like non-NHL prospects, but if we're looking at their actual lineup, yeah, Dubé would be the one that would be interesting, and he is playing on their second line, right? So that would be like a like for like replacement where Calgary thinks, okay, we're upgrading on Dubé here, and the Habs just get younger and cheaper. In terms of other prospects, some interesting names would be 3 former first-round draft picks in Connor Zary, Matthew Coronado, and Jacob Pelletier. And all of those would be interesting in their own ways. I like Coronado the most of that bunch. Has been a longtime teammate of Sean Farrell's, who we're going to talk about a bit later in the episode. And just very, very fun player. Extremely high motor, very intelligent. The skating stride is a slight weakness, but again, skating can get fixed over time. Jacob Pelletier is solid. I think he's overvalued, especially by Calgary. So I'd rather not target him just on that basis alone. Connor Zary, I think, would be more interesting because I don't think that Calgary values him quite as highly as Pelletier. So that could be interesting as a like creative but also like physical centerman. And lastly, Jérémy Poirier, who is a pure offensive defenseman. You're not going to see him do much of anything defensively, which is why he fell to the 3rd round in this draft year. But the offense is just so impressive. He was probably the best playmaker in the entire QMJHL last season in his final junior year. And now he's in the AHL. He's already put up 8 points in 12 games. And that would be an interesting target if the Habs want to expand on the defensive pool. But of course, he is also a left defenseman. So
I have 3 more names.
Want to lay off. Yeah, please.
So one that probably wouldn't have all that much value, but I think there is some upside there, is Rory Cairns.
Okay.
118 points in 67 games last season in the OHL. Point per game in the ECHL so far. And he's probably going to be back in Calgary soon with the AHL. Another
Matthew Phillips?
I was about to say, I love Matthew Phillips so much.
And
now that we can trade for him and just have him in the minors.
Yep. It would be great.
And then the last one,
he'd be great.
I decided to watch one game because I wanted to see the new jerseys. And I was pretty impressed by Cole Schwint just in that one particular game. And for any puck and roll listeners that are under the age of like 23, you won't get this reference. But Cole Schwint happens to be dating this girl named Overtime Megan. And having her in Montreal would be a lot of fun. She's a sports like caster. Okay, Sebastian's like 20 and he doesn't even know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't. Who is this person?
You don't know who Overtime Megan is?
No, I don't, but I can tell why you do. Okay. Cool. Thank you for your insightful analysis, as always.
Anytime.
Just like your analysis on Christian and Jordan Kyrou. Very insightful. Yeah, so I think as a whole, we can agree that the prospect of trading Josh Anderson is very exciting because the return would be an equally exciting prospect and perhaps a very interesting package as a whole. And considering that Tyler Toffoli, who by all accounts had a lower trade value than Josh Anderson does now in the spring, and that he got a 1st round pick, Emil Heineman, and what was the last piece? Oh yeah, Tyler Pitlick. So great return there. But it's just be very exciting to see what the Habs could get, especially if there is a bidding war, right? If you see multiple teams trying to outbid each other for Josh Anderson. And again, like my opinion here is skewed a little bit by the fact that I think that Josh Anderson is a fun but limited 3rd line power forward, right? Like just with that valuation, of course, I'm going to love the idea of getting like a a first round caliber prospect plus more. But I think as a whole, just with where this team is going, even just freeing up $5.5 million in cap space is so exciting. Just look at what the Habs did with $6.5 million in cap space in the offseason. They got Sean Monahan for free with a first round draft pick, right? Like that cap space itself could manifest itself into more assets for the future. It's not just the assets that the Habs would get back directly in that trade. But yeah, I think as a whole, it's very exciting to follow these trade rumblings because this is the one player where I think we're all quite confident that the Habs would get an absolute king's ransom for, even more so than anyone else.
They also, with that extra space, got to pick up Evgeny Dodonov, who's on a heater right now.
Truly,
one goal
in 11
one
games.
game. That's 1 goal in 1 game. That's an 82 goal
offensive
pace
outburst for Evgeny
for
Dodonov.
1 game.
It was a great game though. Like he did great overall.
He did really good.
It was a fluky goal, but he deserved it.
I mean, look.
Despite the score, Montreal did have a decent game for the first half-ish. Kind of fell apart near the end there, but it was a fun one.
I mean, I thought that the Habs actually outplayed the Devils in that game as a whole, but honestly, it's a pretty good tank loss. The Habs played well. You saw some players that were quiet for most of the year play a bit better, and the Habs lost, right? Like it's solid.
And also, the Devils are just kind of a look into what the Habs could be if we actually take this rebuild seriously.
The Devils' defensive core just brings me joy.
Like, I love
Siegenthaler. They got for
so
free.
much.
They got Jonas Siegenthaler for basically free, and he's amazing. They got John Marino for what? Ty Smith, was it? Yeah. Like their
that
defensive
whole team
core
right
is
now
so
is just
Thomas Tatar is leading the league in two-way impact in terms of like suppressing goal chances and like creating goal opportunities. Like he is a two-way beat all over
shut
again.
Down.
No, but he's rediscovering his form from the Tatar to no Gallagher days. It's lovely.
And then they
see.
have Simone Nemeth just sitting in the minors.
That they do, and Alexander Holtz as well. They have they've got some players.
Be so good.
They have some very, very good players stashed away. And speaking of good players in the minors, Xavier Simoneau, our good friend Hadi Kalakesh's favorite player in the entire world. Xavier Simoneau is up to 10 points. 10 points in 13 games in the AHL. His first 13 games in pro hockey in his life. And he's kind of close to a point a game. And this is on a team that has been very underwhelming for the most part. You're not seeing the results that basically everyone expected of this team. And despite that, Xavier Simoneau is second on the team in scoring as a rookie pro player. He's outscoring Jesse Alonen. He's outscoring Justin Barron, outscoring Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Like, he has been incredible to start. And it hasn't been fluky either. He is playing his exact same style, very gritty, always attacking the slot, always camping around the net, whacking at rebounds, is displaying his tremendous playmaking ability all over again, and is really just showing why he has that middle six potential that many of us have been yelling and screaming about for quite some time now.
The moment that cemented it for me was, look, I've always been a Simoneau fan, and then he pulled off a check on a guy who's 6'9".
Curtis Douglas.
This man,
yep.
Curtis Douglas, the shortest person in professional hockey, pulled off a nice check on the tallest person in professional hockey. A guy shorter than Cole Caulfield versus a guy taller than Zdeno Chara.
Is Curtis Douglas taller than Chara?
I think Chara ended up being like 6'8" by the time he was 31 or 32. And Curtis Douglas 6'9".
Yes, that is a foot and 3-inch difference between him and Simoneau, because Simoneau is 5'6", but 183 pounds. He's built. He is a tank, and that is one of the reasons that he has been so successful to start his pro career is because he's built like a brick, basically. He's one big brick. And he just plants himself down and does not get knocked over by anyone, which is also why he's a fairly effective slot presence. Most small players aren't, but he is, because he will just not topple over. He's not going to get pushed aside for anything. And his start in the AHL has been so much fun to watch. Another name that's been very fun to watch for me has been Vincent Rohrer, who I've been watching a lot of as I'm going to almost all home games for the Ottawa 67s. So I watched him a ton last season, and I didn't rank him all that highly, but I always knew that if he saw a lot of development in the summer, that I would look like an absolute fool, because he was the youngest player in that entire draft class. And wouldn't you know it, I'm looking like a fool now, and I'm very happy about it, because it means that the Habs have a very fun prospect in the pool now. Rohrer has centered the Ottawa's first line this entire year. This is an Ottawa team that is currently 16-1-0 with a 38% power play. They are basically the best team in the CHL right now. And Rohrer is their first line center. He's the heart of that first line. It is very much a brain, heart, and brawn type of first line, with Tyler Boucher being the brawn, Vincent Rohrer being the heart, and Luca Pinelli being the brain of that line. But that's not to say that Vincent Rohrer isn't an incredibly intelligent player, because he is. He has so many pro-ready habits. He's a real general on the ice, commanding his teammates. He's really playing a leadership role there and being very vocal about it on the ice.
If you go back, I believe it was actually my first ever episode on Puck and Roll. We were talking about the 22 draft, and Rohrer got brought up as somebody that the Habs were probably going to take at 33. And none of us were high on him at that point. But it just seemed like something that Nick Bobrov was going to do. And look, we ended up with him anyways. And
the reason we were talking about that is because I had a little bit of inside info that the Habs were very, very, very high on him. And I didn't love the idea of that last year. I
can say we got him at the right slot.
Yes, no, for sure. If the Habs,
while some people will scream and cry that we didn't take Jordan Dumais,
that's not the one I'd be crying about. I really want Isaiah George there. I really want Isaiah George, but Vincent Rohrer is really looking incredible this season. He is initiating contact all the time. He plays with genuine violence on the ice, despite being undersized. His puck protection mechanics are looking incredible this year. He drives the net all the time. He's become quite an effective goal line playmaker, especially on the power play. He's refined so many aspects of his game, and he looks far more projectable to me to the NHL now. And I'm starting to potentially see borderline second line upside there, which I couldn't really imagine saying even 5 months ago. So Vincent Rohrer has really been very, very impressive this year. And the last guy, mentioned him twice before today, Sean Farrell. Sean Farrell, one of my absolute favorites. I think we all adore Sean Farrell on this podcast. We are very much a Sean Farrell hype podcast. He is up to 10 points in 7 games in the NCAA, which just brings me joy. That's always lovely to see when your skilled, intelligent prospects are really excelling, especially when it's in a setting as competitive as the NCAA is. Even though it is Hockey East, which is not exactly like the Big Ten in terms of quality, but still, look, he's doing great. And this year he continues to shine with his high-end intelligence. That playmaking upside is so high. I think he could be a great complement to guys like Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. Like if he ends up as that like complementary first line winger, like I could see that type of thing happening, right? Like look at like Toronto, for instance, right? They have not had a genuine first line talent play with Marner and Matthews ever, really. But it's worked in terms of production.
Michael Bunting like that.
I think Sean Farrell has a higher upside than Michael Bunting.
No,
sure.
no question. Yeah.
For sure. And very different player, but has that thing is he has the intelligence and the elite end playmaking to not only like hang with the top line, but to improve them, right? And like actually create for them and get and like stay on their level in terms of thinking the game. And one of the reasons that we've all been so excited about having Kirby Dach on that top line is because there are very few players in the Habs organization that could keep up mentally with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, and Kirby Dach is one of them. Sean Farrell would be another when he makes it, and that concept excites me.
It's kind of weird looking back. We mocked Mark Bridgman's drafting tirelessly, but in his last few years, he made a few really good picks, like Jordan Harris, Sean Farrell.
That 2018 and 2019 were 2018, 2019 were two excellent drafts. And then Sean Farrell was the one pick in 2020 that I was super excited about. I liked the Caden Gooley pick. Gooley was second on my board when the Habs picked. Only player I preferred was Maverick Bourque. But Sean Farrell.
Right about that.
We'll see. We'll see. Dawson Mercer, I probably could have also put ahead of Gooley, but
see, I'm a Dallas scout, so I know Maverick Bourque.
Me too, right? Like at this point, I feel like it's very much a coin toss between the two, but I'm still very high on Maverick Bourque. But Sean Farrell was the one pick. Like I audibly cheered when the Habs picked him. Like one thing I've been doing for the last few years has been writing down which player I would pick if I were the Habs for every pick that they make as an organization. I picked Sean Farrell like a round and a half before the Habs picked Sean Farrell. I really liked him. So when he dropped that far and the Habs got him, like I was not quite Lane Hudson excited, but very close. I've always been a very big Sean Farrell fan.
My only question, if we take Luca Pinelli, will it be above or below Lane Hudson?
Depends where he's picked. If it's if the Habs pick him at 62, I'd probably cheer more than I cheered for Lane Hudson.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm that high. Like for me, like right now, Pinelli is right around the 18 to 20 range on my board. And if you consider the discrepancy between the 2022 draft class and the 2023 draft class, he probably would have ranked 9th overall for me.
Okay, so I've watched some Luca Pinelli.
Yeah,
he's not even in my first round yet.
Blasphemy.
I think he's at like 34 for me. Because I'm starting to combine on my 32. He's an honorable mention. I need to watch some more. Look, he's above like Daniel Booth and stuff, but
Daniel Booth isn't even a third round talent. Come on. You can't throw Daniel Booth's name here.
I've only watched one game, so
I've watched 30. I love Luca Pinelli. Yeah. I really love him. I'm like ultra high on him. Like I'm not expecting you to have him 20th on your board. It's more just think first like watch some more. I think first round is very much.
Well, it's kind of like our shared passion of Victor Nuchev in like January.
No, it's different. Like Nuchev was like a really just fun, wild player. For me, Luca Pinelli is tremendously projectable to the NHL, and I think he has high-end upside as a top 6 center. Despite playing the wing this season, I think he is a center moving forward. And Luca Pinelli, again, he's been playing on that top line for the best CHL team all season, and he's the smartest player on that line, on that entire team. I'd argue he's the best player on the entire team already, ahead of a former 10th overall pick, which, again, shouldn't have gone 10th overall, but did, and ahead of a guy like Vincent Rohr, right? Like this is it's a weird team because it doesn't have the individual star power that you'd expect from a team that is 16-1 on the season. But what it does have is a ragtag bunch that is being led by a draft eligible. Luca Pinelli leads the team in scoring, and that's no coincidence. He creates everything on that line. He's tremendously effective in transition. His defensive play is excellent. All the advanced metrics for him back it up. Like if they didn't back it up, I would be hitting some brakes on my Pinelli hype train a little bit, just out of like worrying that I'm not quite seeing the right things. But
I haven't even looked at the analytics for him yet.
Like last season is a D-1. He was an 82 percentile player in the entire track data set by Mitch Brown, which was the highest percentile of any OHL player, including guys like Cam Allen, Colby Barlow, Callum Ritchie. And I have Callum Ritchie in my top 6 of this draft class, right? But Luca Pinelli analytically was better than him last season. There's
I
so
just got
much to
some
like
ridiculous hate online for saying Callum Ritchie was worthy of going first overall in like 2022.
Oh, 20, yeah, I agree with that. No, I 100% would have had Ritchie over Shane Wright.
Because I watched a lot of Callum Ritchie after you said that, and I'm like, I so entirely agree with that.
Yeah.
And then somebody blocked me because I was that bad of a scout. Apparently, he sent me a message too, telling me how he was blocking me. It was adorable.
That is so sad. But no, Callum Ritchie, again, one thing with him is that he's not even at a point of game yet this season, right? Which of course is going to turn a lot of people off. But he is so creative as a playmaker, and he's such a unique archetype too, right? Like Shane Wright is an incredible player, right? There's a reason I ranked him first overall last year, but he's not a unique archetype. Callum Ritchie is. You don't find basically any player like him where it's an extremely high intensity, elite playmaking, two-way center. Like you don't find that. He plays physically. He's a great forechecker. He will outskate anyone he plays in terms of like effort. The actual skating stride itself is flawed, but in terms of effort, he's like he will sprint for every loose puck. But he plays so intelligently. He would have been one of the top 3 most intelligent players of the draft class in 2022. I am relatively okay with saying that I would have ranked him first overall. He would have, however, been in the same tier as Shane Wright. I'm not saying he's a tier above Shane Wright, but I think I would have had him just a little bit ahead. Again, it's still early on in the scouting season, and things could go south, right? That evaluation could change. I've watched a lot less of Callum Ritchie than I did of Shane Wright. But if I go back to thinking what I thought of Shane Wright at this point last year to seeing what I think about Callum Ritchie now, yes, Callum Ritchie would have edged out Shane Wright. But yeah, there's all to say that the OHL is very fun this year, and that my 2 favorite players, not necessarily the 2 players I'm going to rank the highest, but my 2 favorite players in that league for sure in terms of draft eligibles are Callum Ritchie and Luca Pinelli. And I could go on about Luca Pinelli for days. But yeah, Aaron, I'm happy to send you some more game tape of Luca Pinelli.
Absolutely.
But I can only recommend.
I'm thinking about just playing a joke on you and like putting Daniil Boot like 7th overall.
I would die inside. Daniil Boot. I mean, look, we're on the topic. May as well. Look, I don't have anything against Daniil Boot, despite what it may seem. It's more just a frustration with people ranking players so high when you're only ranking them because they are big goal scorers, right? It's a very limited skill set.
Every aspect of his game is so slow. Like
he is massive.
There's not a single part of him that's fast.
His release, he has a surprisingly quick release. He's
but his hands are slow and his skating is slow. His stride is so messed up.
Oh, his stride is awful. He's one of the worst skaters I've watched in this class so far. The hockey IQ for me, however, is the really big hurdle that I don't think I'm going to get across. Like I wrote a game report on Daniil Boot for Dauber. It reads like a rant just because of how frustrated I got watching him play that game. He was playing in the MHL, which is the Russian Junior League, which is a league that makes the QMJHL look like a defensive masterclass. It is quite a painful league to watch from a defensive standpoint. And despite that, Daniil Boot could not find soft ice. He could not find open ice in the offensive zone to get his shot off. And when your only genuinely elite skill is goal scoring, and you cannot find space in the MHL which is also a larger ice surface, of course I'm going to be concerned about the projectability of that, right? Like the individual tools are interesting. And by tools, I mean tool as in the shot. The shot itself is amazing. Everything else is very flawed. So I may be overextending on calling him not even a third round talent because I don't know that yet because I haven't watched enough players to actually say that. But what I can say is seeing him ranked 10th overall ahead of guys like Andrew Cristall is just laughable to me. I cannot wrap my head around
love
that
Andrew
kind of ranking.
Cristall.
Oh yeah, I do too. I have Andrew Cristall ranked in the same tier as Zach Benson, Callum Ritchie, and Leo Carlson right now. I adore.
Okay, no,
Andrew
I
Cristall.
don't.
I have him ahead of Brady
behind.
Yeager. I have him ahead of Brady
I have him
Yeager.
ahead of Brady Yeager too.
But there's I struggle when I see rankings that have a player like Boot that high, where I feel like I don't know what type of game tape you're watching in order to rationalize that type of ranking, apart from just looking at a stat sheet. Because the production's good, the shot's good, the size is there. He doesn't even use that size though. He's very upright in a skating stance, and he gets out leveraged all the time. Like he's not overly physical either. He doesn't use that size to hit. It's just I don't get it with him. I can't rationalize him as a first round talent, let alone a top 10 guy. So thank you, Aaron, for setting me off on a rant about Daniel Boot.
I've got a question.
Anytime.
Yes, Josh.
So we've just talked about 6'5" Daniel Boots.
He's big.
And yeah, he's a big guy. And then 5'7" Xavier Simoneau.
5'6".
5'6".
Tiny.
Tiny, yeah. Is it safe to say that we're past the too small argument with the way that the league's going, safety, physical play? Can we like put to bed the too small argument at this point? Because
I'm gonna have a different opinion than Sebastian here.
In my opinion, I think I don't see being too small as an argument against a player anymore.
Yeah, it's a great question because I don't think there's one answer to it. I think with size, it's not that there's like one perfect size to be in the NHL. It's more just every size, especially when it's at the extreme ends, like 5'6" or 6'6", is you're gonna have some type of hurdle, right? If you're 5'6", you're gonna need to be able to withstand physical pressure more than your 6'6" counterpart, right? Like you're gonna have to adjust to that. If you're 5'6" and you can't withstand physical pressure, like I'm sorry, as much as I love small players, that is not going to be like I would not be able to see that player progressing into pro hockey in any real sense, right? But the reason I love players like Wayne Hudson is that he excels under physical pressure. He likes drawing it in and getting around it. Or guys like Xavier Simoneau, who out leverages guys that are 6'8", right? Like he's
6'9"
or 6'9", sorry. Massive players. But again, it's all about leverage, right? So Daniil Boot is big and heavy. He's like 230 pounds already, right? Like he's really big. But he stays so upright and he doesn't use his strength very well. So any regular MHL player, which is not a very good player, but any player could out leverage him despite the size difference. So what I'm saying is, like, as a bigger player, first you're gonna have to work on leverage, right? And learning to use that advantage, because like, in terms of strength, it still is an advantage, right? But you're gonna have to learn to actually apply that practically. Another thing is your skating is gonna be a lot more sluggish if you are 6'5" or 4 or whatever, right? It's not gonna be as fluid as a smaller player. And that's normal. We're gonna have to compensate for them, right? You're gonna have to learn to really like refine your skating mechanics. And the opposite can be said about smaller players. Small players can be tremendously fast with very flawed mechanics, but because they can just like have very, very quick strides, they can kind of make up that difference a little bit. So different hurdles for different players. So for me, from my standpoint, I'd love to say, yes, we are past this in the NHL. I don't think we ever will be, honestly. I think there's always going to be that tendency to draft bigger, which part of me kind of still likes, because it means that one of the easiest ways of just cheat coding the NHL draft still exists, and just draft a small player who should have gone earlier, right? Like this is a strategy that just works. Cole Caulfield, Lane Hudson, the list goes on and on and on, right? But it's a tactic where it's not about drafting small players because they're small. It's drafting skilled players who are available where they are because they're small, right? There's an important distinction there. I'm not saying that small players have an advantage. I think they have a disadvantage. I think that like a player who's 6'2" or 6 feet, probably depending on position, obviously, but if it's a forward, if he's in that range, he's going to have the least hurdles, right? It's going to be the most straightforward way of making the NHL. But the smaller players to me are more exciting because they are. It's a market inefficiency, right? So in terms of my like draft rankings, I'm always going to try to compensate that. Like especially when it's like in regards to like the consensus rankings, I'm always trying to bump up the small players a little bit, just because I think I love the skill here, and I think he should be ranked higher than most people are ranking him, because I think even very progressive public scouts are still kind of like taking off points because of the size, even when the habits that the player has account for that size difference. But yeah, it's a great question, and again, there is no real answer. But Aaron, please go ahead.
Okay, so for me, whether it's a small player or a big player, I just want to see how they use their size to their advantage, because you can be a small player that plays like a small player, and there's ways that you can use that to your advantage. You can evade quickly. You can be the fastest player on the ice. You can be the sneakiest.
Cole Caulfield.
Exactly.
Cole Caulfield,
or
he finds space.
Exactly. And then there's small players that play big, like Xavier Simoneau, who's not afraid to get into those battles and
Brendan Gallagher.
Brendan Gallagher, do anything that a guy that's 6'5" would. Just they can use their size and their strength to their advantage. Like Brendan Gallagher can deadlift 550 pounds, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then I also want to see with big players, how agile and how quickly can you move despite your size? And are you going to get, I'm not going to say confused, because there's some big guys with really good hockey IQ, but are you going to get stuck because of your size? So it's the way that they can evade and act like a small player sometimes. And I like to see that ability and those strengths come out when you're not between 5'11" and 6'3".
Yeah, for sure. Right. And I think like one of the reasons that we have this trope of, oh, bigger players aren't quite as intelligent, it's not because there's any correlation between size and hockey IQ, but it's because you see NHL teams draft players and develop them and bring them to the NHL because of their size, while ignoring other issues in their games, right? But then you have exceptions like Kirby Dach, who is big, right? He's 6'4", and he's among the smartest players on the entire Habs roster, or in the entire organization, as a fact, right? It's a trope that exists not because it's true, but because of the exact tendencies of NHL organizations that we're criticizing here. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting discussions to be had here. So Josh, that's an awesome question.
Yeah, my problem is just when you hear of people being knocked down just for their size. Like you looked at Cole Caulfield before he was drafted, and you could clearly see the NHL upside in his game, but that he was just getting knocked down simply because he was short. Rather, like he made up for it, but that didn't seem to matter. That's where I have my issues with it. It's people looking at the numbers rather than the games. But yeah, who am I to say anything? I'm just some guy.
I mean, Josh, you have how many years of hockey watching experience? I think you definitely have some insight here.
Yeah, I might have a couple on you guys, but
I think
you're catching up.
A couple on us combined, because Aaron only has like what, 3 years?
I don't even have 2 yet.
Ooh. Yeah, Josh, you clear us combined easily. And I think on that note, we're going to kick off the final segment of the episode, which is our favorite segment, as always, This Day in Habs History. So, Josh, you have the floor finish off our episode on the most beautiful note of a history segment of the team we know and love.
On this day, the year of our Lord 1955, one of the most interesting players that you may not know about or maybe underrate a little bit was born in Taschereau, Quebec, as Pierre Roland Larouche. Larouche was dominating the QMJHL before being drafted, namely in the 1973-74 season, where he set the record for assists and points in a season with 157 assists and 251 points. The assist record still stands to this day, and the only player to register more points in the Q was Mario Lemieux. Like Lemieux, Larouche was drafted by Pittsburgh a few years earlier, and he became the youngest player to score 50 goals and 100 points with Pittsburgh. That record was later beaten by Gretzky and the Oilers. But a poor 1976-77 season compared to his previous numbers and the start to the 77-78 season prompted the Penguins to trade Larouche, along with the rights to Peter Marsh, to the Montreal Canadiens for aging Peter Mahovlich and Peter Lee to create the rare triple Peter trade that might be unique in the NHL history. Larouche then scored 50 goals in 1979-80 with the Montreal Canadiens, becoming the first player to score 50 goals with two different franchises, again beaten by Gretzky. After a short stint with the Hartford Whalers, Larouche scored 48 goals with the New York Rangers in 1983-84, and he became the first and so far only player to have scored at least 45 goals in a season with three different franchises. Larouche's 50 goals in a season is the most by a Montreal Canadiens center in team history. His 48 goals are the most by a Rangers center in team history. He was the youngest player to score 50 goals and 100 points in a season at one point. He was the youngest player to score 200 and 300 points in his career, which was later passed by Wayne Gretzky and another underrated forward, Brian Trottier of the New York Islanders. He retired with 395 goals and 822 points in 812 career games. So, Hall of Fame snub or rightly left out? You decide.
Hall of Fame snub. I've always liked Pierre Larouche. That QMJHL season is just absurd. Over
I'll be real with you
250
guys.
points. You've never heard of him, huh?
I have never heard of that guy before in my life. But from what I just heard, honestly, if there could be a Hall of Fame for trades, the Triple Peter trade should be in there.
Oh, for sure. Also, to put up 45 plus goals for three different games, that is absurd. Also,
Gretzky
he must have hated Gretzky. He must have absolutely despised Wayne Gretzky.
All of his so many records.
This man would be in history books.
The only thing that Gretzky didn't do, only thing he didn't do was go to the QMJHL and beat his record there too. That's the only thing. But
he's got the 45 goals. He's got those 45 goals in three different teams.
45. Yep.
Gretzky didn't even do. He never reached that in St. Louis or New York or.
Yeah.
What an awful
Gretzky
player
shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame either. I agree.
And I think on that note, we're going to conclude this episode of the Puck and Roll podcast. This was very much a discussion-based one. There was very little prep for this. It was really just going off the cuff and just having a hockey chat, because in the end, that is exactly why we started this podcast, was just to talk about hockey, and that's what we did today. So, Josh, Aaron, thank you for joining me as always, and to the listeners, we will see you again next week with a very special interview with Marc Dumont. And until then, goodbye.